Guys, we do have some absolutely huge, absolutely critical realignment news on this Monday. There's two articles I want to get to, including a massive mailbag on the Pac-12, what's going on there. I will say, the more I start going through these realignment articles, the more propaganda you see. Basically, every realignment story I've been reading is either Pac-12 propaganda or Big 12 propaganda, so it is out of control. And one of the stories that I'm going to be referencing, it is important for you guys to know there is a slant that is very pro Pac-12 in it. Now, this first one is more neutral. It's just exploring the idea of FSU and Miami, them possibly going to the SEC or the Big Ten. Where do the Seminoles and Hurricanes fit in possible conference realignment? This is on possibly going to the SEC. Florida State and Miami obviously support reasonable geography. They exist in a state that's already a part of the SEC. I'm not sure that's a real motivation anymore in terms of conference realignment. I think the idea of the conference being all from relatively the same place, that died when USC and UCLA went to the Big Ten. The downside is that neither program would add to the league's footprint in the way Virginia or North Carolina would. TV markets don't matter as much now as they did in previous rounds of realignment, but they're not irrelevant either. Miami would join Vandy as the only private schools in the conference. Miami would also be the second smallest school in the league. It's blah, blah, blah. They're just talking about how small it is. There's good data to suggest the Seminoles and Hurricanes would both grow fan interest. And this seems like a rather bland article, honestly, guys. I'm not sure why I highlighted it. But realistically, looking at the Miami situation, the Florida State situation, I do think it's more likely they go to the SEC. Personally, I don't think the Big Ten would be all that interested, although we also have the issue with Miami and members of the SEC not getting along, specifically Florida. And then you take a look at it from the Big Ten perspective. The Big Ten prides itself on lofty academic reputations. FSU and Miami both rank 55th in the latest U.S. News and World Report rankings, which would put them in the middle of the conference. So they don't have bad academics at all if they're in the middle of the Big Ten. The Athletic cited value to the Big Ten and leadership and internal alignment as criteria the league will consider. Alignment has been a problem at FSU and Miami, but seems to be improving at both programs. The Hurricanes and Seminoles each hired new athletic directors in December. Blah, 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 blah. So, guys, the key thing with that is with Miami and Florida State, I don't think the Big Ten is all that interested. I think the Big Ten is waiting right now on Notre Dame and that decision. And if Notre Dame isn't available and they still wanted to expand, you're looking at a combination, in my opinion, of a Virginia and a North Carolina before Miami and Florida State. There's been kind of different rumors about Florida State going to the Big Ten that I've heard. I don't know how real they are, but I do think if Florida State does leave the ACC, it would be for the SEC. I'm fairly certain on that if the ACC ends up suffering significant problems, and all of that has to deal with their grant of rights right now. None of those teams can get out of that contract that has them legally locked into the conference through 2036. There are possible workarounds depending on if a lot of the teams want to get out of that contract. I think it's like 8 teams, like the majority, they could possibly get out of that. So we will see if that ends up happening. That would probably come after a Notre Dame joins the Big Ten or something like that, which would then trigger the SEC to become more aggressive in their realignment, possible expansion. Right now, the SEC is sitting back. Everyone was kind of expecting or thinking they were going to make a move to counter the Big Ten, but they're saying, listen, the Big Ten has 16 teams, we have 16 teams, we don't need to do anything right now, and we will react if Notre Dame ends up going to the Big Ten, if they end up doing anything. So we've got this mailbag now, which is a total major update on the Pac-12 situation. You can see it right here. Just with different questions, a lot of intel in this. Rumor is that ESPN was in on the SEC grabbing Oklahoma and Texas, and Fox was in on the Big Ten grabbing USC and UCLA. When it comes to Pac-12 expansion, is ESPN really the one making the choices? It's hardly a rumor. ESPN and Fox drove the SEC and the Big Ten expansion moves. They are the grandmasters in the realignment game, so this is breaking news, and this is a reputable source that is saying it all comes down to ESPN and Fox. The reason these realignment moves are happening is due to the TV networks, which is what we speculated last week, and this completely confirms it. Can we stop talking about realignment for a second and realize we're less than 30 days from kickoff? Nothing will happen until next year. The continuous speculation is pointless. And this individual says, I beg to differ. Resolution is likely this fall, and we will cover realignment regularly through its conclusion. The issue is too far important to ignore. That said, the hotline will be ramping up coverage of football next week. So guys, people criticize, me for covering realignment so much. It's basic. This is realignment. This is realignment. That's what it is. Like, it's never ending. And I make it never ending because the videos do well. So this is important. This is big intel. This person is saying, listen, it's happening, and it says the resolution is likely this fall. So that's why we need to keep covering realignment. It is so important for the sport. We understand college football season is coming, but this is major intel, and this is news right here. Apparently, it's a resolution to this whole ordeal on what the Pac-12 is going to do, what the Big 12 is going to do is happening this fall. Odds of some kind of TV deal between the Pac-12 and the ACC. And he says pretty good. Now remember, this is a pro Pac-12 source, right? This is a reputable source. This is a real, person here. But this is a pro Pac-12 source that's going to have Pac-12 glasses on when they're talking about it. But he says better than 50-50 chance. Now, last we heard, a potential deal between the ACC and the Pac-12 was off the table. But apparently he's saying maybe better than 50-50. ESPN could create a media partnership based on each league's Tier 3 infrastructure, combining the ACC network with the Pac-12 network to create more subscribers and revenue. So it looks like a total merger of the two networks. For all of their problems with distribution, the Pac-12 networks are on the cutting edge with their remote broadcast technology. Okay. Please expound on your comments yesterday regarding the benefits of merging the Pac-12 and the Big 12. The hotline first addressed the benefits of a merger or scheduling alliance 3 years ago and continues to believe it's the best outcome for both leagues. Yeah, I just don't understand why the Big 12 would do that personally, with where they're situated. Guys, remember, last year, we learned about this last week. Last year, it was confirmed that the Pac-12 could have theoretically eliminated the Big 12 when the Big 12 was down bad. They had just lost their two best schools. We're basically in the opposite situation. The Big 12 can step on the Pac-12's throats. Why would you merge with them? Why wouldn't you just siphon off their teams like they're trying to do reportedly with Arizona and Colorado? So I don't understand. This is a pro Pac-12 source. But my question to this person, why would the Big 12 agree to a merger right now when they hold all their cards? They have so much more leverage. Why would they want to do a merger with the Pac-12? I know this is a pro Pac-12 source, and they're talking about, it's beneficial for both leagues, but if I'm the Big 12, I would siphon off your teams, but I'm not interested in some of your, I'm not interested in doing a merger where it's split. I'll take your best teams and that's it. Now, if I was Oregon and I was Washington, there's no way right now I'm joining the Big 12 because I still want to try and get into the Big 10 or the SEC. The money is just too good to pass up. Worst case scenario, I do have to join the Big 12, but right now there's no way I'm doing it. Of course, the most important part and the biggest qualifier to all of this, when you look at the last paragraph, it's extremely unlikely at this point due to the commissioner's current relationship. So, yeah, that's not going to happen. A merger between the Pac-12, it would make no sense for the Big 12 at all. This is a very interesting thing right here. Will you rank the Mountain West teams in order that teams will be added to the Pac-12? I'm not sure that any will be added, but if there's movement, San Diego State number 1, Fresno State number 1 or number 2, UNLV number 3, and please note San Diego State is on a different tier for reasons previously outlined. We give the Aztecs a 50% chance to get in. Nobody else is above a 25. So right now, San Diego State, when we're talking about the Pac-12, who are they going to add? They just lost 2 schools. San Diego State comes off as one of the main ones, and then the other one could be SMU, because we heard it originally. We had heard it was San Diego State and either Fresno State or SMU. This person is saying it's not going to be Fresno State, or there's less than 25% chance it's going to be Fresno State. So is it San Diego State and SMU? Are those the two? I don't know. We'll see. Why so slow on adding San Diego State? Is it because of the Aztecs or the lack of a good option to pair them with? Nothing has slowed down the process. If the Pac-12 decides to expand, any substantial developments are weeks, if not months away. And yes, the lack of obvious 12 team could be problematic for the Aztecs. I would imagine they would eventually want to expand at some point, though, to try and get back to 12 teams if they don't lose anyone else to the Big 12. What hearing is taking place in October in regards to UCLA's decision? So there's been some talk that UCLA is going to get sued because apparently they contacted the Big Ten to leave the conference. The most important thing to note from this part is the last little snippet. It says they cannot block the move, but they can make it painful for the Bruins where it matters most, the wallet. So they might sue UCLA. UCLA is gone. Okay, Gavin Newsom, who apparently was blindsided, and there's some things with Gavin Newsom. He wants to run for president, things like that. He doesn't like this move for UCLA, and, the rumor is UCLA contacted the Big Ten first, which is some sort of violation, I guess, to where they could sue UCLA. But, again, they cannot block the move. That is the most important thing to note from this part of the article. So it looks like they're trying to sue UCLA. UCLA did something. I wonder, how, if UCLA asked to join the Big Ten, what happens with USC? Did USC get offered and then UCLA said, take us too? So I don't really know how that whole thing works out. You would think the Big Ten would approach both USC and UCLA because you're not just going to add one team to your conference. Theoretically, you would want to add 2, and that's kind of how it happened. So I don't know if the situation between the Big Ten and USC was different. I would guess it probably was if UCLA is the only team that's getting sued. But we will see what happens. UCLA is headed for the Big Ten no matter what. Whether or not they get sued, the move is not going to get blocked, basically. So they will be in the Big Ten. But there's some big news. The biggest things to really take away, I would say, it's a potential TV deal between the Pac-12 and the ACC. Apparently, perhaps better than 50-50 odds. This is a Pac-12 source, remember, so this is going to be, of course the Pac-12 is alive. Of course ESPN is going to do a media deal. They're going to thrive. They're going to paint it with rose-colored glasses, and then you take a look at a source from the Big 12, and they say the Pac-12 is dissolving. So it's important to understand there's a lot of propaganda going around. We really started learning of this a few weeks ago when it really got bad with different sources reporting completely just overall fake information, trying to smear other conferences. That's how bad it's gotten, and it's really turned into not only just the conferences, but the fan bases of the conferences. You've got Big 12 fans that hate the Pac-12 and want them to dissolve completely. You've got the Pac-12 that hates the Big 12. Guys, let me just say, I am a Big 10 fan. So I am completely non-biased. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just reading things and trying to draw conclusions based off of intel that I'm receiving. So, you know, when it comes to this whole situation, I still think the most likely thing, Oregon and Washington stand pat, try and get into the Big Ten or the SEC, and we might see some movement with Arizona and Colorado. There were meetings that were happening. The Big 12 is rapidly the Big 12 doesn't want to make the same mistake the Pac-12 did last year. The Pac-12 could have added Big 12 teams when the Big 12 was down after the loss of their two best teams. The Pac-12 didn't. They didn't step on their throat. The Big 12 saw that last year, and they're saying, we want to step on their throat. They're not trying to make the same move. We've seen their new commissioner come out publicly stating he's going to be very aggressive when it comes to expansion, and I think Arizona and Colorado are the two most likely teams next in terms of college football realignment moving from the Pac-12 to the Big 12, in my opinion. Of course, this is still developing. We're going to have to see what happens. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.